I'd like to call this meeting of the Horry County Solid Waste Authority a special meeting to order. First order of business is to have the invocation and the pledge. I'll offer the invocation, and Norfleet, if you would please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll all bow your heads. Heavenly Father, thank you for all your gifts. Thank you for this special season, the symbolic of rebirth. We hope that people are recovering from the illness that's being spread as quickly as possible. Please grant special mercies for anyone who is ill. Please also help guide us in the deliberations of our business today, that it be pleasing in your sight. These things we ask in your Son's name. Amen.
Flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. This meeting is being held for one item and one item only that's on our agenda. But I do want to say a couple of preliminary things, the first of which is that I'm glad to see Mr. Gosnell as well, and I'm glad to see that Carlisle, you're well and back with us. We've concerned about anyone who's been experiencing this pandemic, and in that frame, DHEC has not yet released what their guidelines are beyond 1A. That being the case, we did write a letter to DHEC expressing that sanitation workers need to be held in high priority and requesting that all of our workers and anyone in our industry be given the highest consideration for being vaccinated at the earliest convenience. And we've mailed that letter to DHEC. We'll see what happens when they release their guidelines past the 1A. 1A, of course, being anyone who's on the front lines of medical procedures and those who are in homes. And that everyone in that category has not been given their vaccine yet, so they have not released the further guidelines. But I hope that we will be given the furthest, most urgent consideration. The other notice that I wanted to say preliminarily, I'd like to thank our engineers for being here. We have the results of our bidding. You have seen the results. They have been submitted to you. Today's meeting, we will not be considering any motions or taking any votes. It is simply to be informed of the bidding process and the result of that. For all intents, a letter of intent and a letter to proceed has already been issued. And today's meeting is to inform you exactly what went into those decisions so you can feel confident that every consideration was made of the alternatives that were out for bid. And after saying that, I'm going to turn it over to our executive director for presentation. The approval agenda. Thank you so much for the order that I would ask that our agenda be approved. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Not hearing any. That's approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's been a long process. I think we got good news. A good program to get where we need to get. And Vance is going to give us an overview of where we are been, where we are, where we're going. And Dan's going to give you a slight update on the budget of where we stand today. And that's a lot better picture than we thought a year ago. So we'll turn it over to Vance.
Okay, if I can move my mask.
Sure.
Thank you for the opportunity to come discuss with you the bidding process for the project. As We're here today to talk about 1187 Bridge and Bar Area Backfill Project. It's sometimes referred to as this project number 2 in this. But what I'd like to do is go over the process that we've gone through and the evaluations of it. And it should take just a short time for me to go through this. So I'd like to start with the bidding process. So in the bidding process, there was a number of steps that went through. First one was a mandatory pre-bid conference. In other words, every contractor that submitted a bid had to attend the pre-bid conference. We had an open bidding period where we had bidders' questions, we addressed questions, and if necessary, issued addendum. On this project, a total of 4 addenda were issued. After the addenda were issued, bids were received. So we got a number of great bids. I'll talk about those more in detail in a minute. And then we went through a bid evaluation process. As the process went in there, and I'll go in a little more detail on each of those. Some of the key aspects of, let's start with the mandatory pre-bid meeting. One of the key questions that was asked and answered at the mandatory pre-bid question was, do bidders need to bid all 3 options? Answer, no. Bidders are encouraged to bid all 3 options, but are not required. This is also reflected in the minutes that were included in addendum number 2. I'd also like to point out that the bid form itself, which was included in the documents, under section 300 bid forms, bidder represents. Bidder understands that the owner may select a bidder based on the lowest responsive bid plus or minus any bid alternatives which the owner selects in order to determine the combination of lowest responsive bid for which to determine that the bidder is suitably experienced. That gives you the option to choose what option and what combination of alternatives you choose to be in your best interest. Opportunities for bidders to submit alternatives for consideration. In addendum number 3, there were several questions. I'll read a number of questions and answers of how this was addressed. For instance, in addendum number 3, question number 2 was, will all soil need to be conditioned to plus or minus 3% of optimal? The majority of the fill will be under the water table, making it difficult to achieve the specified moisture content. Will an initial bridge lift be acceptable? Answer. Any proposed deviation from the requirements of section 02200 should be presented and discussed in the submitted work plan. If proposing a deviation from specification, bidder shall provide a discussion of how backform performance will be verified. Another question was question 25. The question was, what is the maximum depth of the backfill lifts? Answer. Refer to section 02200 and answer to question 2 of this addendum. I just read the answer to question 2. Question 38 said, as a potential cost savings to the owner, can the dewatering be quantified monthly and split out per each dewatering area? Answer. Bidders may provide value engineering proposals of potential cost savings for owner consideration. Bidder shall provide a base bid as required by the contract documents with any value engineering proposals added as a supplement. In other words, all the base bids that were presented were in accordance with the specifications. Addendum number 4, question number 8. Reference question and answer number 2 on addendum 3. Will a 4-foot bridge lift be acceptable? If not, spot undercut and replacement may be required, which is considerably more expensive than conventional undercut and replacement. Answer. Addendum number 3, answer 2 applies. Bidder may provide value engineering proposals of potential cost savings for owner consideration. Bidder shall provide a base bid as required by the contract documents with any value engineering proposals added as supplements. So this was the setup of receiving the bids. Bids were received. We went through the evaluation of the bids. We've received bids from 7 contractors. All 7 bids were considered responsive and responsible. There was no reason to disqualify any of the bidders for any of the options. We identified 3 key contractors for interviews in regards to their bids. We did interviews with King, in particular for option 3. We did interviews with Eldine Weaver, in particular for option 2. And we did interviews with R.E. Goodson, in particular associated with option 2. So, as part of the evaluation, we went through, and probably I'll jump back and say, what are the options just as a review? So, we did 3 different options, and it gave you the flexibility to understand what the value of time and what the value of on-site resources were in accordance with the bids. Option 1, all backfill from the 1187 site via the bridge. It had a long contract time. It required approximately 6 months of co-disposal, C&D co-disposal within the MSW landfill. Option 2, all backfill from the 1187 site via the bridge had a compressed time frame, i.e. required no C&D disposal within MSW landfill. All these time periods that I'm referring to, when I say no co-disposal, we had a schedule. We've done airspace calculations, and we know how much material that airspace can hold. We know a projection, use the term of projection of how much C&D will go into this into the future. Obviously, we cannot predict the future and events that may happen that will affect those projections. What we did is a projection of time frame. Essentially, it left no safety factor for additional time. It was, we had the time to get the site ready, site to get it approved by the state, and to start using it. We had option 3, utilize Highway 90 landfill soils, compressed time, same compressed time, which meant no co-disposal within MSW landfill. Option 3 allowed borrow operations within up to a 29-acre area on Track D on the Highway 90 property. There is an image here. I will go into more detail on that, but on the base option, it allowed them to use a 29-acre area to get dirt out of for that option. Of the 29 acres that was made available to the bidders, approximately 2 acres are already in use for bar areas by the Solid Waste Authority. They've dug material out of this area. And approximately 8 acres were approved for bar and construction of ongoing project number 1. That's the project that we awarded back in October. So those areas are being made available. I'll get into a little more detail on this in the future, but that was the way the project was bid. 29 acres available on parcel D. So as we said, we had 7 contractors who bid. Not all contractors bid all options. I can give you a list, if necessary, of which contractors bid which option they bid, but it was summarized in a letter that was circulated. The bid tabulations, I'll just summarize who the low bidder was for the base option for each option. Option number 1, that's the one that was the longest schedule, requiring all souls from 1187. The low bidder was Eldine Weaver for $11,910,508. Option number 2, the low bidder was also Eldine Weaver at a bid amount of $12,305,920. You can look at the premium of those 2 numbers being to compress the schedule. That's the only thing that changed between the 2. That's the premium it calls to compress the schedules, the way that should be interpreted. Option number 3, low bidder was King Construction. Total bid was $11,535,526.80. This is for allowing use of soils from parcel within the 29-acre on parcel D. Also compressed time. So compressed time and using on-site soils gives you a cost savings. So all bids, all contractors, as I said, were responsive and responsible. We conducted interviews with the 3 contractors that I identified earlier. And so with regard to option 1, King did not bid option 1. LD Weaver and R.E. Goodson did bid option 1 and did not propose or discuss any value engineering alternatives for option 1. With regard to option 2, L. Dean Weaver did not discuss or propose any value engineering alternatives. R.E. Goodson did propose that a savings could be realized by allowing limestone instead of granite for the riprap material. That's the material used for erosion control, outlets and such, and by reducing the amount of riprap on the project. The potential saving was not for using this alternative riprap and volume. The potential saving was not qualified. It was not submitted a bid and was not qualified in the interview. Again, King Construction did not submit a bid on option 2. With regard to option 3, the bid for option 3 submitted by King Construction did include a value engineering proposal. It was submitted as part of his bid. And the proposal was to modify backfill specifications supported by a third-party geotechnical engineer. If the value engineering proposal is acceptable, the bid for option 3 submitted by King can be reduced by $412,950. And the substantial completion date could be reduced by 2 months. In addition, the soil bar area within Track D on the Highway 90 site, which is what this image is for, is reduced to a maximum of 20 acres. The base bid allowed 29 acres that they could go into. They self-imposed, they would limit it to 20 acres, leaving 9 acres undisturbed. So neither LD Weaver nor R.E. Goodson proposed any value engineering alternatives for option 3. So our analysis was based on the criteria that I said, but again, I'll reiterate, if the contract is to be awarded, it will be awarded to the lowest responsive bidder whose evaluation by owner indicates to owner that the award will be in the best interest of the project. However, the owner may award the bid in accordance with any and all procurements procedures allowed by law, including but not limited to South Carolina Code of Law. So our research into this said that option 1, if it were to be accepted, that we would recommend that LD Weaver is the lowest responsible bid in the amount of $11,910,508. Our evaluation also indicated the bids submitted by LD Weaver for option 2 in the amount of $12,305,920 is also the lowest responsible bid for option 2. So they had the lowest responsible bid for option 1 and 2. If you compare the option 1 to option 2 bid, it indicates a cost increase of $395,412 for a shorter construction schedule to potentially avoid C&D co-disposal within the MSW landfill. I would like to specify again that option 2 schedule allows no contingency for construction schedule slippage. In other words, any unforeseen, anything comes up that would extend beyond the schedules that have been presented to you, there is no float in our schedule that would account for that, and we would potentially be into the time frame that would require C&D co-disposal. Option 3, the bid submitted by King Construction in the total amount of $11,535,526.80 is the lowest responsible bid for option 3. Option 3 is projected to also avoid C&D co-disposal within the MSW landfill, and also has no contingency for any kind of construction schedule slippage. Comparing option 2, which is the same schedule as option 3, the difference between there is where the soil materials came from. Option 2 required all soil material to come from 1187. Option 3 allowed some material from parcel D on the landfill site to be used. Essentially, you're gaining the advantage of being able to start the backfill operations immediately while the bridge is being constructed. That's the difference between option 2 and 3. And it said that by comparing 2 and 3, allowing the use of up to the 29-acre area on parcel D, that resulted in a cost savings of $770,393. However, King also, in their bid, for your consideration, submitted a value engineering proposal. The value engineering proposal was for altering their backfilling procedures that would be, as I said earlier, that would be certified by a third-party geotechnical engineer to meet the compaction specification per the specification. We have reviewed the work plan, and we take no exception to the proposed work plan. We feel it will absolutely achieve the goals of the project for placing the backfill material. In addition to that, the alternative reduced the 29 acres available down to 20 acres. So they're limiting the amount of area that will be impacted by their operations and therefore not as usable by the Solid Waste Authority in the future. So, and they also compressed the schedule 60 days, which gives you a contingency for any unforeseen construction schedule slippage to happen and still meet the deadlines of the other 2 projects. So we have summarized all these options and have provided what we believe are the pros and cons of each of those. And we've had discussions with staff with regarding to what each of these bids, what's involved with each of these bids. So with that concludes our evaluation of the bids, and I'm prepared to answer any questions you may have.
And so I'd just like to say that I participated in the conference of the 3 lowest bidders. And I was impressed with the confidence all 3 contractors had in their bids. I was impressed with the confidence all 3 had in informing us that they were aware of the timing constraints of the project. And all 3 convinced me that they were understanding of the site conditions that are prevalent. What also impressed me was that King let us know that even though they were compressing the area they were going to interrupt in Site D, one reason they thought they could reduce the area of coverage is because they feel comfortable that they can go to greater depth without compromise, which they said they didn't have dug enough test pits, they reviewed enough soil logs. They convinced me that that's something doable and not just something they were posturing. I thank you for your presentation, And I do thank you for the opportunity to participate in that event. And Danny, thank you for inviting me. It was informative. All three enlightened me as to conditions they saw in the project, which enabled me to understand better the conditions they were bidding. And I was impressed with the process. And I thought that the questions you had were engaging, and I thought we got good responses from all three.
I think you've got excellent bid results. Cannot stress how pleased I am with the bid results that you got. All the bidders were competent. All the bidders were, put great time and effort into putting their bids together. And the three we interviewed in particular showed that they were all solid, good bids.
The third bid, the key traffic problem, Highway 9.
Yes, ma'am. As we, maybe it's worth to clear some of that language up. Option 3 had an alternative bid item that if we did not have adequate soils on parcel D, that give us a price to haul it from 1187 via Highway 90, on highway trucks. And so the purpose of getting that bid in is that if we were to award a contract for option 3, and we, for unforeseen reasons, ran out of material on option D, you were not in the position that you had a contractor that was already hired, had no incentive to give you a good price. You were negotiating from a position of weakness of what that price would be to go to 1187 in Holland. It was never intended to be for the purpose of awarding the bid. It was for having a bid price for what that number would be should that occurrence happen. So in no way was it ever considered to be that is what we're planning on. As a matter of fact, we're absolutely planning on that not happening. I'd be disappointed if it ever did have to happen. But what we have got ourselves in a position is that we know if we're going to request a contractor, because there's no better alternative than to use Highway 90, we have a competitive bid situation of what that price would be, and we're not in a position that we're trying to negotiate after a contractor's been hired and we really have no other alternative. So that was the purpose of that.
Good information. Thank you. Dan to come up and, thank you, Denise.
Thank you.
Give us kind of an overview of where we are on the budget.
You have some good news for us. Great.
Well, just like, just to remind you, is in the budget that we presented last spring to you, we had around 21 million in the budget for this project. So as you can see, of course, with these bids, they're going to come in a whole lot less than what we initially had budgeted. Currently, we have a little over 9.6 million in our general construction account, in our designated account for landfill construction. That doesn't, of course, include the project we currently have ongoing. But as you can tell, the amount of money that we anticipate possibly having to transfer from post-closure is a whole lot less than we had anticipated. We're looking at possibly only maybe around $4 million having to transfer, if that. As I said, that doesn't include any transfers that we'll maybe do during the year. We always do kind of at the end of the year, we have our transfers, so it doesn't include anything like that. So I definitely feel like we're in a much better position, being that these bids were very competitive and a whole lot less than what we had budgeted. So I wanted to kind of give you an update on that as well.
Any questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The floor is still yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and really one of the reasons that I would requested you to sit in on the interview process to see what kind of effort went into this whole process. I mean, it wasn't just throw out a document, bid it, get the price in, and go with it. We interviewed, we talked. A lot of these contractors came out 3 or 4 times and met with Mike and rode and looked. There's a lot of interest, and we advised in October the 27th. A long hour-and-a-half presentation that was at times very, very exciting. The process we were gonna go through, the options that would give us ways to look at different ways of doing stuff. And I think it worked out as we planned. And we're just looking forward to going ahead and getting this project underway. And we'll be going through our purchasing procedures that we will hit those targets. And hopefully, January the 6th was the date that we were shooting for, that if we had everything in place by that time, we'd be on schedule. But, we'll see how it goes, we'll keep you posted. Feel excellent about the budget now. The savings we may very well not even have to borrow from another fund. That falls back on what we've always done, pay as you go. So, I just appreciate what staff and what Mike's done and what Vance and Greg's done on getting us to this point. So, we're looking for a good new year. Maybe 2021 will be better on hurricanes and the plague and everything else.
I want to seize on one thing that our engineer told us. Vance Moore said there was no need to disqualify any of the bidders. I also heard that from you, that the staff did not feel there was any need to disqualify any of the bidders.
Good.
I think that's important that we had such talented people who wanted to do this job. And they were really intent on making the job attractive to us, to let us know that they would really want to do
And
it for us.
I think 2 of the bidders were North Carolina, the rest were South Carolina, local. So I think that was good.
Any questions among the board?
I'd just like to say, I'm really thrilled to see that many people bid, because I think a lot of that resulted in a cost savings to us. And I hope that happens in the future bids that we have. I'm glad to hear that financially and for the quality of bidding that we got in the numbers. So I think that's a great thing.
In our tight frame of scheduling, the announcement of award already went out. This was the soonest this board could be. We could advertise a meeting. We could publicly present it in a publication to meet all requirements. This is the soonest we could meet. Thank you for making yourselves available for this meeting. I think the staff and our engineers have done an excellent job of presenting the facts to you. The public hasn't seen all the information you have over the last 3 days. I do appreciate the work that was put into tabulating. I'd like to thank Mr. Sam Johnson for some of the questions that he's had about the project. Some of the questions may have helped you understand some of the requirements of the job that were quite tight and compelling to review. I had made a reference to our engineers that this was not just simply an earth-moving project, and they pretty much confirmed that there were quite a few challenges. And that's why we saw the options that we did to help inform us of the best path to get there. And I do congratulate you on your strategy. And I do thank you, Danny, on the work that you did in evaluation and coming to the decisions that you did. And I commend you on getting word out to where King to proceed so that they can order all the equipment necessary and we can get this job rolling. Is there anything else for the good of our order today? Where there is no need for an executive session, there a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
I've heard a motion and a second. Happy New Year to one and all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.